What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. And today I'm looking ahead to some of the biggest fights from many different promotions over this weekend, around the 13th, 14th, 15th of December. There's a lot of different promotions putting on a lot of different fights. I have another video coming out looking solely at the PFL Europe finale. I have a whole breakdown of that card. But today, I'm looking at a couple of fights from Cage Warriors, Invicta, CFFC have a card, ACA have a card, as I said, PFL Europe. Brave have a couple of cards, and in the UFC as well. I want to talk a little bit about that very, very interesting UFC card, and especially the main event that I definitely want to touch on. But first of all, I want to look at this ACA card, because it is a a promotion that maybe we don't look at a whole lot, and for one reason or another, I suppose. But there are some really talented guys here, and some some big fights for the area, but also some people who we know from other places, who we've seen fighting in other promotions. And one big fight, I suppose, from this card that stands out is a combination of both of them. It's Bibur Tumanov against Haush Maffeo. And if you listen to a lot of the Sheehan shows down through the years, you'll know of Haush Maffeo, who fought in PFL many times and was very, very successful over there. He beat the likes of Clay Collard, Anthony Pettis, like Rabzabov, Alex Martinez, Joelton Leatherback, and many more as well. He's been in there with Aubin Mercier, obviously famously the Nathan Schultz fight, which was like that famous sparring matchup, I suppose, between friends. And it's funny, when you talk about friends and teammates and brothers, Bibur Tumanov, I believe, is the brother of Albert Tumanov, the famous fighter who has been around for a very, very long time. Bibur is 13-2, and talking to people about him, this guy is an absolute beast. He beat Lance Palmer last time out. He's been in there with some very, very good guys. We also Timur Hizriev. He went to a 5-round decision with him back in 2019, ended up losing that fight, but he's won, almost every fight since, only losing once to Islam Omarov, who himself is a very, very good prospect as well. So that's a very, very interesting fight. And there are many on this, but the Tumanov is a guy who's definitely a standout. And I think if he wins this fight and he beats Haush Maffeo after beating Lance Palmer, he fought Diego Brandao in there as well. I think because there's certain guys, a Doombe or a Lazy King or other guys like that they kind of break through, and people maybe who wouldn't be paying attention to these cards all that often would start to recognize them, or the likes of Capoza or guys like that would start to talk about them. And I think he may be one of those. So win this fight, and I think it could well be that for him. There's some other interesting fights on this as well. Artem Rinzakov is fighting Yusuf Ryozov, and I believe that's a rematch of a fight they had before. Artem won the first one. He's a big, rugged guy with big wrestling, great jiu-jitsu, very, very strong, and Ryozov is more kind of a technical striker, but very, very dangerous. Talking to a few people who look at that scene, they're saying that's the card, that's the the fight on that card. It really, really is. So the main event as well, the light heavyweight title, Adlan Ibrahimov. There's a lot of a lot at stake, I suppose, there, because we see a lot of light heavyweights coming from this part of the world, because there isn't, people always talk about America. In America, if you're that size, you're going to be playing football or something like that. So it tends to happen. And Odilov is coming out of Tajikistan, and we've seen a lot of fighters coming out of there over the last while, but he's had a really good run in ACA. He's fought in EFC as well for a good few years. He actually fought Shavkat Rakhmanov back in 2018, obviously before going up in weight classes. Obviously he lost that fight, considering everyone has lost to Shavkat. Although I'm recording this just before the Ian Gary fight, so maybe that's not true anymore. We'll see on that. But he's been in there with Wagner Prado and others as well. And he looks a real prospect there, with big. Watching a couple of these fights there today. big paws in him, big paws in him, and well able to knock guys out and ground and pound him out as well if he needs to. And then Ibrahimov on the other side of it, similar, looks a really good guy. They have a lightweight title on that card as well. So it's a very, very interesting one. Maxim Grishin, who was in the UFC and has fought an awful lot, he's also on that card. Vitaly Bigdash, who a lot of people would know from over in One Championship and other places like that. He's also on this. So very, very interesting to see that card and to see how it goes. So yeah, ACA, one of those cards, one of those one of those events that I think people will this weekend, if they're tuned into. I don't think it'll be that much of a disappointment, to be honest. The next card I want to touch on is we'll just go maybe run through a couple of the cards quick. CFFC, they also have a light heavyweight title in the main event. Luke Fernandez 3-0 against Greg Ellis 7-5, and a lot of the fighters, I suppose, on the likes of CFFC, and even I'll touch on Cage Warriors here in a second, are less experienced guys coming through, and I think a lot of the promotions, obviously in America and in Europe as well, there's less money. It's more rare, I'd say, you would see someone who's 20 and 22 and 2 or 20, and stuff like that. They're going to get snapped up. They're going to move quicker, but still, there's some standout guys coming through, I suppose, on some of these cards. And watching bits and pieces of both of these guys, this Fernandez guy, I know he's only 3-0, but he looks like a very, very good prospect. He has all finishes. He's fought all his fights in CFFC. He's undefeated as an amateur as well, fighting all his fights in CFFC, the first of which was only in 2020. He only made his pro debut last year. It's actually his first fight of 2024. So he's definitely a guy I think to look out for this week. He's 29 as well, so maybe it's kind of time to get going, but definitely wanted to mention that CFFC card. So let's talk about Cage Warriors. And I think Cage Warriors, for the most part, is very, very similar. A lot of the guys on the undercard are guys who haven't had that many fights, who you might think you sign them up now and maybe in a few fights they will they will turn into very good fighters. But I think the main event is not that. The main event is a very talented how would you put it, I was going to say journeyman. We'll go with journeyman against an extremely talented up and comer who has shown a lot of what makes him highly touted in his 4 fights so far, and that's Teddy Stringer as he takes on Darren Smith Jr. Watching both of these lads today, I'm really excited about this fight, to be honest. And I suppose the reason for it is you have a guy like Teddy Stringer, as I said, who's 4-0, was a highly touted amateur. Let me just tell you a few of the guys he fought as an amateur. He fought Jordan Zebo, Jordan Zebo fought Doomba, didn't he? He fought Mark Ewan, who's one of the top prospects at professional now in the world. He fought Connor Hughes, who this weekend is fighting for the championship over in PFL Europe. He fought George Staines, probably the best amateur to come out of the UK since a guy we'll talk about later on, so no spoilers. And I fought Tiernan Loughran, who's probably top 2 or 3 amateurs to come out of Ireland over the last 5 years, all as an amateur. Now he's 4-0 with all 4 fights in Cage Warriors as a professional, and it's interesting to see him. Obviously fought in Manchester, he fought in the Unplugged cards, but this is his second time fighting over in the States. And looking at some of his recent fights, the thing about him is there's a lot of probably a lot of tape of him as an amateur, but as a pro, all his fights have finished in the first round, looked very good and looked very forthright and quick in all of those finishes, I suppose. But his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu are the best part of his game. He's so good on the ground, so fast, serene. It's effortless. You always look at a guy, whether it's MMA or any sport, and it comes, doing this job, right? I watch an awful lot of fights and an awful lot of fighters, and it's mostly good fighters, but I watch a lot of them fighting bad fighters, if you want to put it that way. And the degree of effortlessness that's a hard word to say, that a good fighter shows against like an okay fighter or a bad fighter is really the difference. But even then, like, the effortlessness of some guys compared to others is over and above. Like, I think some people, their effortlessness because they're so fast or they're so athletic or they're so good at one thing. But it's funny. It's rare you see, and I think Teddy Stringer is one of these guys. Not to give him too much of a blow up here or anything, because he's still young and still green enough. But it feels like MMA is effortless to him. The way he moves, the way he transitions from one part to the other, he just looks so good. He looks really, really good. And the one thing I will say as well is that over the last, well, probably forever, but over the last while, I have maybe have realised it, but he's probably been doing it for a long time. Ian Dean, the matchmaker in Cage Warriors, has been kind of pushing the younger guys into matchups like this. And we talk about the matchup in a second, but more so maybe than before. No, and obviously watching from a lot of the Irish guys' perspective, but the likes of even Lonnie Kavanagh as well, who pushed him into the fight with Sean Silva very quick, pushed Conor McCarthy into a fight very quick. Solomon Simon was another one, and all of them have worked out so far. And I think this is another example of it, because a lot of the young guys coming through today are so good. It's almost wrong. Like, if you were to find another 4-0 fighter, or 3-1 fighter, or 5-4 fighter, or something like that, that would normally be given to a guy who's 4-0, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. Teddy Stringer would just decimate him. It wouldn't be good matchmaking. It'd be, it'd be like throwing me in there with fucking Brock Lesnar. Like, it just wouldn't be fair. It just wouldn't be fair. So you're almost forced to do matchmaking like this. And I think it's good. I think it's good because it not only kind of pushes guys on to go to the next level, it gets them ready quicker. Because the thing is, they have to be ready quicker because they're getting signed quicker to Dana White Contender Series. They're getting signed quicker to the UFC, to the Ultimate Fighter and all that. Look at Lonnie Kavanagh. Look at a lot of the guys who got in their lights of Nathaniel Wood and Jack Shore and others. And not even them, they're probably getting in there later a few years ago than the guys are getting in now, who are getting in very, very early, even the likes of Oban Elliott and others. And this matchmaking is very interesting. So Teddy Stringer is fighting Darren Hollywood Smith Jr., who's 37 years of age, 25-13. He's gone to decision 17 times. He is as close as we'll get in MMA to a journeyman, but he's no joke of a journeyman. He's won 6 of his last 7 fights, only losing to Shane Campbell, who we all know. He's been in there with some very, very good guys. Roosevelt Roberts, who's obviously been in the UFC, Chris Curtis, and has been a pro for a real, real long time. He's fought in the, those Bama US cards back in the day. Made his debut in 2010, and a guy who fought and beat James Muntasri back in 2013. That's a name that's going back now. And Christian Aguilera is what Christina Aguilera. I don't think even. But a real watching a few of his fights, a powerful guy. He doesn't have as many knockouts as you think. 9 knockouts, 5 submissions. But he's a big power hitter, unorthodox, kind of a weird guy to fight. Look, he can be taken down, and he's been submitted 3 times, so it's not that many times in 38 career fights. But I think a lot of people are willing to kind of stay away from him, or don't want to be want to test themselves against him, and you can absolutely see why. But I think Teddy Stringer will be forced to do it. He'll be forced to be tested against him. But I'm interested to see here if, let's say, Teddy for a while tests the striking. Let's see if he does stay on the outside and jab him up, even if this was a 15-minute fight, and he was to win it on the outside. I'd be very interested to see how that works out. Now, the likelihood is Stringer will get a couple of takedowns and end up, maybe finishing him or probably end up finishing him or winning the decision on the ground. But I think it's an intriguing matchup because sometimes, like, Darren Smith Jr. has seen it all. He's seen it all, and okay, 25-13 is not a terrible record. It's not a terrible record, especially considering the caliber of some of the guys he has fought. Sometimes you see a guy who's 25-13, and all 13 guys that who beat him are useless as well. But no, that's not the case here. So Teddy Stringer goes in there and he finds a part of MMA he hasn't seen before. Darren Smith will have seen it before, and he will be ready for it, and he won't panic in there. Now, I'm not saying Teddy Stringer's gonna panic or anything like that, but that's what these matchups are for, to see if Teddy Stringer can come through that sort of fight against a guy who's been in that sort of fight many times before. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to seeing how that goes, and that that card in general. I must say, Cage Warriors, we're obviously we'll do the review of Cage Warriors as well. I'm not necessarily sure that the Cage Warriors American cards have necessarily taken off as much as maybe they would have hoped or like the European cards, but I think they have done a good job and put on some good cards, like even this Roberto Hernandez against Jacob Rosales, 9-3 against 15-9. I think that's a good fight. Damon Wilson against Ryan Lilly as well, I think is a good fight. James Seattle against Johnny Robles as well. So there are some good guys on this and a lot of up and comers as well. So Cage Warriors always put on a good show. And if I was over in San Diego, I'd probably travel down and watch a bit of this. So very, very interesting. The other, I suppose, one of the other big cards of the weekend is Invicta in 59, which goes down over in Atlanta, Georgia, in the US on December 13th. There is a big title fight on this card, Talita Bernardo against Jennifer Maia, and obviously we know both of them from the UFC. And honestly, since Invicta have got the new TV deal, I think they have put on some really good cards and have some really good fighters in it. Like even here on the undercard, Valeska Machado, I know she fought elsewhere recently, but she's back fighting it for Invicta. Obviously, she fought Danny McCorn before and lost that fight, but that was a fight of the year contender. That was an absolute barn burner of a fight. It was last year, wasn't it? So great to see her back, and I'm sure if she wins there over Yasmin Castaño, she could be back in for a shot at the title. Alejandra Lara as well, who we've seen a lot of in big promotions. She's on this card as well, and Riley Martinez, who's 4-0, is in the co-main event. But the main event is interesting. Bernardo, 37 years of age, obviously very, very good jiu-jitsu artist. We've seen her, in Invicta now for the last 4 fights, and she's got 4 finishes in those 4 fights, beating some, good opponents. Olga Rubin, who's been around for a long time, and Katrina Lehner as well was a great win, but she fought in the UFC, beat Sarah Moraes, got some tough matchmaking, fought Marion Renault, Irene Aldana, and Viviana Araujo, which is not easy for anyone. Even back in the day, she fought Juliana Velasquez, the former Bellator champion. So, her opponent Maya, 36 as well, 22-10-1. She also lost to Araujo in her last UFC fight, but has one fight in Invicta since and won that one. She's in the last 2 years, she's beaten Casey O'Neill and Marna Moreau, so she's right there towards the top of her game. The only fights she's lost over the last few years are Araujo, Firo, Kaylin Kerimanara, formerly Chukagan, obviously, and Valentina Shevchenko. So since then, and Liz Carmouche back in 2018. The only fight she's lost since 2014. Those are the only fights she's lost since 2014. So she's a real good fighter. Jennifer Maia, obviously very good underground as well, but has more knockouts and more wins, I suppose, elsewhere than Bernardo. I wonder at this stage of their career, where is it? Which side is it going to go at? I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. You'd have to think Jennifer Maia would be the favorite maybe coming in here, and the ground game of Bernardo, which is obviously her main finishing weapon, with just over half her fights finishing with wins on the ground for her, is going to be hard to use against Jennifer Maia. And Maia has been submitted once in her career, I suppose, but it's that was a very, very long time ago. Back in, when was it? God, I'm going a long way back here to find this. Is back in 2011 against Vanessa Porto. So Porto, that's what I said that very odd, but interesting. That's very interesting. But I always, when when Valeska Machado is on the card, I will be watching, and shout out Danny McCormick as well. How is she not in the UFC? Absolutely insane. Before we move on to the last 2 cards I want to talk about, and one big fight, especially 2 big fights, especially just PFL Europe. I have a full video out on it, but main event, Lazy King against Tripoli, 4 title fights. welterweight, Michele against Zindelli, Hughes against Kazuba at lightweight, Lusser against McGrillen-Evans at bantamweight, and Wazinska takes on Valentina Skitisi after Chanel Dyer had to pull out of that fight at flyweight. Honestly, I think I'm most excited about Lusser McGrillen-Evans because that was going to be a barn burner. Their last two fights were amazing. I think Hughes Kazuba, I was very much on the side of Kazuba winning this whole tournament at the very start after he won it last year. But like, I just recorded the preview for this before this, and like, the performances of Hughes over the last while have been outstanding. So that's a very close fight. I think Michele is a guy who has really prospered this year, and Zindelli's a guy who's improving. He's only 9 fights into his career. As I said, Skitisi, she looks so good against Chanel Dyer. It was a split decision, so she could have won that fight. Some would say that the Wisniewska-Skitisi fight might actually be a better fight than that. So very, very interesting there. And there's some good stuff in the undercard as well. Owen Sheridan from Ireland is on it. And Claudio Pacella out of SBG taking on Oscar Answorth is definitely the standout fight on the undercard. And I believe that's opening the card. So very interesting fight there. For the UFC, there's 2 Brave cards this weekend as well. The bantamweight title is on the line, as is just the bantamweight title. Like that, the middleweight one as well, but it's not. Nosoi Ndimbele against Nicholas Zawandi is up for grabs, or fighting for the bantamweight title. And there are some other interesting guys on these 2 cards as well. In the main event of the Brave 92 card, Abdul Rahman Drai is on it against Mohammed Fakhruddin, a guy who's been around for a long time. I've watched Drai in a few different promotions, and this guy is a tough guy. I would expect that to be a war. There's no doubt about it. Islam Khan is on this card as well, 8-1. He looks a good prospect coming through. Rami Ahmed, again, a guy who looks a good prospect, 13, and Trig maybe going to that next level now. But the one everyone's talking about on these cards is Mohamed Makayev against Luhando Biko. Obviously, Makayev, arguably the greatest amateur of all time, 13-0 as a pro, cut by the UFC in ignominious circumstances at 24 years of age, after beating Manel Kape, after for most people, I think, earning the number 1 contender spot in that division, considering Kaya Sakura fought for the belt with I'm recording this just before that happens, but in the past, that's the future now, without a UFC fight, and everything. He surely should have been the guy, but he wasn't, because something happened backstage and Dana White didn't like him and the way he acted on fight week before the Cape fight and all of that. But to leave that to a side, I think here's the biggest issue with Mohamed Makayev. He flew too close to the sun too quickly. And there's a reason that prospects need to be built and need to go at it 3 fights a year and get there when you get there, right? Because when you are Makayev and you get in there and you look so good and then you get an injury and you kind of rush back and then you're rushing to be the youngest and you don't make it and you're rushing again to get to the top and then I just need to get past this, and then it's all breathlessness, and then that you suffer inside the cage. And even though you're winning, you're so good, you're still winning, but maybe the performances aren't good and you're rubbing people up the wrong way, and then you rub the fans up the wrong way and you rub the matchmakers up the wrong way and you rub Dana White up the wrong way. And sometimes you have to realize there's 3 parts to this game, right? There's the results, which is the most important part, which he succeeded in. There is the build-up of you as a fighter, which I think is open to criticism, right? Because even though he still won all his fights and looked fantastic, I think it could have been and should have been done a different way. And then the next part is the likability part, the fan part. And he has failed at that miserably. I think the UFC and others have failed him as well, right? And I think he needs just to step back, win this fight, and afterwards go, I'm delighted to be able to get an opportunity to fight again, to win a fight. I'd love to be back in the UFC. If they don't want me back straight away, I will fight again in Brave in January. I'll fight again in February. I'll fight again in March until the UFC want me back, right? Or something like that. And don't go mad, don't go middle, just straight out say it. Don't mind doing a bbig interviews or anything like that. Like I think that's what he needs to do. So he's fighting here at Lutando Shorty Biko, which is a very appropriate name considering this is one of the shortest guys in MMA. He's 5 foot feck all, as we'd say here. Muhammad Makayev is a tall guy at 5'9". Biko fought against Bukange Musanya, who we've seen a lot of on the Sheehan show over the last few years in one championship, and I believe I think he's even less than 5 foot, if I'm not mistaken. So this is no, he's 5'2", it says here on Sherdog, but I'm not too sure about that. I look, Makayev will surely win this fight. Like, Biko is a good fighter, and he's won most of his fights, as I said, 12-3, mostly decisions, 9 decisions, but he can hit, and he's good takedowns, good takedown defense as well. But surely Makayev's takedowns are going to be too much for him. Surely Makayev is going to be able to hit him too much from the outside. He's going to be able to jab him up. He's going to be able to land shots, and he's probably going to be able to finish him on the ground, surely. So it's a good matchup for Makayev to win, but also, do you know what the problem is here? And maybe I'm wrong here, but I just thought about it and I'll throw it out there. What Makayev is almost trying to do here is win a PR battle, to look good, and do you look good beating up a guy who's 9 inches smaller than you? Yeah, maybe this isn't the one. But look, we'll see how it goes, and we'll see where we go from there. So those are the brave cards from the weekend. But then the UFC, and I just wanted, obviously the lads have broken down this card, and I'm not going through the card at all. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the main event. The undercard is interesting. I love watching Sean Woodson anytime he fights. I love the Joel Alvarez against Drakkar Klose fight. Jacoby and Petrino, someone's getting knocked out there, and Cub Swanson and Cartillo should be fun. But this Colby Covington Jackie Buckley fight, right? Colby Covington is a guy who divides opinion, obviously, or maybe he doesn't. Maybe just everyone hates him. But I don't really care about him. I'm not American. Like, I don't get dragged into American politics all that very much at all. I don't really care. Like, one time he said he was going to bury the Irish people like the English did, which I'll be honest, I didn't like that. But that was a long time ago, and whatever. But it must be said, not to call out Colby or anything, but this must be one of the greatest acts of cowardice in the history of the UFC. He was called out by Shavkat. He was called out by Ian Gary. He's called out by everyone. No, I can't fight him. Not fighting. That fight's not happening. Ian Gary putting up post after post after post. Come on. Let's fight Colby. It makes sense. Come on. And Ian Gary takes the Jackie and Buckley fight. Shavkat needs to fight because Bilal is injured. Still not a word from Colby. No word. Ian Gary takes the Shavkat fight, and the second that happens, bang, Colby comes. Oh, I'll fight Jackie. Oh, no problem. I'll fight Jackie. Headliner fight in Tampa, Florida, where I'm from. No problem. Oh, I'm fit. I'm ready. I'm ready to fight. Oh, Shavkat's not available. Oh, shucks. I would have fought him. I would have fought Ian Gary, but they're not available. Bilal's not. Oh, shucks. I guess I'll have to fight Jackie and Buckley. And what an act of absolute cowardice, sniveling. But maybe that's part of the act, and maybe Colby can use that. But God Almighty, what for a lot of people. A lot of people have called out John Jones for ducking, and you won't fight Aspinall, but you'll fight an old man, and they've called out Marab recently for not fighting Umar and all. But this to me is the worst of all of them. It really is. But I'm interested to see the fight, though. I think it's a good fight. I think it actually makes more sense than most of those fights, if I'm being honest. I wonder how prepared Colby is. Like, was he in the gym? Was he getting ready? It's amazing that he wasn't headlining this card from the very off, considering he's from Florida, and I suppose this is sort of his level now. But maybe they wanted him to headline against Ian Gary, and he was too afraid to do it. Seemingly, that's the way. That's the fact of the matter. So I don't know. Maybe he always thought he was going to be on the card, maybe against someone else. But Buckley is no joke. Buckley can hit very hard. He can wrestle. Is his defensive wrestling good enough to live against Colby? Maybe not. But where is Colby at this stage of his career, getting a little bit older? Obviously lost every title fight he's ever been in, It's an interesting fight for that. Like, is Colby still there? You know, because a lot of guys, you know, if this was, say, a Jose Aldo, and you think, everyone's writing him off, he's been in title fights and he's lost a couple, he'd win that fight, you know? But there's other guys who've gotten that position and they've gone away from the title and, like, they lose that fight and then they lose the next one and suddenly, you know, they're trying to box Jake Paul or something, you know? But which one will Colby be? I'm honestly not too sure. And I think this is a great fight to find out. So it's an interesting main event. It's there's plenty of sticks to beat Colby with as well, which I'm sure people will be glad of. But I haven't seen that much of it. Like, the amount you saw for John Jones, the amount you've seen for Merab, compared to that of Colby, and, you know, maybe the maybe the pie charts, or not the pie charts, the what are they called? The circular ones, the overlapping charts, whatever they're called, for Colby fans and haters of the other people overlap, which wouldn't at all be surprising. But that's it. That's my preview for this weekend's fights. As I said, I'll have the PFL Europe preview as well out, so please check that out, and all the rest of the stuff over on Sherdog.com. But for Sherdog, my name is Sean Sheehan, and I'll see you all next time.